If there are three things the Victorians loved about Christmas, it was alcohol, more alcohol, and mixing alcohol with fire. Victorian Christmas traditions range from what we would nowadays consider traditional, to the slightly odd, to the tacky, to the quite frankly sometimes downright dangerous, because putting lit candles on your Christmas tree just wasn't bad enough. One such dangerous pastime was a game known as Snapdragon, which involved placing dried fruit such as raisins in a shallow dish of brandy and setting it on fire. The lights were turned off and all participants had to snatch the dried fruit out of the fire, where they would be in competition to eat the most fruit, which was often still on fire, by extinguishing it in their mouths. Hello dear viewer, welcome back to my channel. I'm Zoe, and here we like to rummage around in the attics of history and see what we can plunder. Today's treasure includes this knitted orange, featured in Fancy and Practical Knitting, published in 1897. You might also recognise this book from the very famous example of the Victorian cycling sweater, which is also in this publication. I found the concept of a Victorian knitted orange just absolutely delightful and decided that I needed one immediately. Despite the fact that it was 10:30 at night, I should really have gone to bed half an hour ago, I didn't have the right materials, and I have never before successfully knitted in the round on double-ended needles. I didn't let that stop me though. So I cranked out these bad boys, bought these when I was a teenager, absolutely hate them. In true Victorian fashion, I will be later setting these on fire. Due to the vagaries of Victorian knitting patterns and my blatant inexperience with knitting on these needles, I didn't realise that I was using the wrong tool for the job and just assumed that it was user error, which is a natural assumption to make when you've never done something before. This project was initially less than smooth sailing. While it's not in any ways a difficult pattern, it can be a little bit challenging to interpret, especially when you're not used to the techniques involved. It was only about halfway through knitting this, and the next day, when I was considerably less tired, that I realised it wanted me to be knitting in rib, but I was like solidly halfway into my orange and didn't want to start again. So I decided that I'd knit this one, which was on knitting needles, which I knew were larger than the pattern was recommending me for, which leads me on to the second part of this experiment, which was acquiring the right wool, first and foremost, and secondly, learning how to read the damn pattern a lot better. It's knit in rib, it's knit on 2mm needles, and it is using 100% wool, very, very fine orange embroidery thread. But I scored it second hand for 30p a skein in the charity shop. Glorious. The double-ended needles, I bought a pack of them off Amazon, and I think they were about 15 quid. I did attempt to buy them from a local small business, but they didn't have the range of sizes that I wanted. I was desperate to start this project, so I caved into capitalism and bought them on Amazon Prime. I'm not proud of it. Anyway, complaints about capitalism aside, let's get on with the project. And Polly definitely didn't help. It says to cast on 48 stitches on 4 double-ended needles, and I'm just going to see how these go. They might be too thick, this thread might be too thin, I might need to double it up. I'm not sure, we're going to wing it. 48 stitches on each pin. It seems like a lot, but that is what it's calling for. So that's what I'm going to do. Maybe in rib it won't seem so excessive. I've got my needles everywhere. I'm just gonna stab them into my orange, to be honest with you. There you go, love, make yourself useful. 48, my god, that took forever. I have cast on to my 3 needles. I can now commence knitting rib in the round. I'm just gonna do my thing and hope that the next orange I make looks less like a pumpkin. Oh, bloomin' heck. Glad I did this the first time round on bigger needles, my god. It's bending my brain. Knitting is relaxing, I tell myself, as I knit with 2mm needles on a piece of bloody string. This better be the most majestic orange you've seen in your life. One road took me like 7 bloody minutes. If this orange is rubbish, I'm gonna be naffed off. So we just went to go get our Christmas tree, and I am working on my orange while my partner's in the supermarket. My partner leaves for work just about the time I get up every day, and he turned the Christmas tree on for me to wake up to. Oh, that man is a treasure. I am on the last row of my Victorian knitted orange. This is most exciting. So I am going to knit up my final row. So I was a little bit dubious about the fact that it said to cast on 48 stitches on each needle. But then if you consider how small the gauge is, it doesn't actually look too big. The other knitted orange is frankly comedically large. I do confess I am a little nervous that this orange is going to be too wide but not tall enough, so I am going to wet block this. If I pull it taut, it looks much more like the original image does in the illustration in the book, which does make me think that that might be a good way forward. I mean, I know it's a really little picture and it's black and white and it's a little bit hard to tell, but I think one of the main reasons that I thought that it was in stockinette stitch originally is because the illustration doesn't have the kind of gappiness that I would expect from rib. But with more experience using very thin double-pointed needles, I'm realizing that it's a lot subtler than I'm used to in terms of the stitch distinction. So I found that really interesting. And I've dropped a stitch again because I was waffling. What is it the kids are saying nowadays? Is it yapping? I was yapping too much. Yes, I shan't be saying that again. Generally speaking, I've got to say, I feel like just a video of me sat on my sofa knitting is probably not overly riveting. So I thought while I sit and do this, that I would discuss some of the other Victorian Christmas ideas for celebrating Christmas, which I found particularly odd, strange, or interesting. So the first thing that I thought I would discuss while I'm finishing up my orange is the hilarity that is Victorian Christmas cards. We hadn't really culturally wise settled on like what we consider like your basic Christmas card motifs. In terms of the more like secular style Christmas cards, they could be creative and sometimes honestly downright creepy. So I'm gonna put a few of my favorite examples up on screen as I'm talking, so we can all have a good old gander at some of these Victorian Christmas cards. I must say, in my research, I was surprised by just how much glitter was involved in a Victorian Christmas. And I do recall crushed glass being involved as a way to make things shiny, which, needless to say, don't do that. It's a terrible idea. Another thing that I discovered during my research, and something that I am quite frankly desperate to attempt, is gilded walnuts. I have all of the supplies. I was taught how to gild at university as part of restoring historic gilded frames when I was training to be a conservator, but I have not gilded since the start of the pandemic when I was forced to stop attending university in person. So to say that my skills are going to be a little rusty is, I fear, an understatement. Nevertheless, I am determined to attempt this. At time of filming, I have not yet attempted to gild a walnut. I have what we would refer to in conservation as Dutch gold, which is fake gold leaf. It's not actual gold because I am not made of money. Now, there's one story where the walnut is hollow. That's a Victorian lecture on greed and consumerism, which is hilariously very relevant today, I feel. But I don't actually think, given the sources that I've been able to find, that actual Victorian gilded walnuts were hollow. I think they just gilded a whole nut, and then you were expected to eat them at the end of Christmas or on Christmas. In terms of time taken throughout this project, should you wish to attempt to recreate your own Christmas orange, generally speaking, I timed myself earlier, and my average speed for knitting a row on my orange is between 12 to 13 minutes. So let's go for the middle and say a row on average takes me approximately 12 minutes and say 30 seconds. Now, bearing in mind that is when I'm concentrating and not attempting to waffle on for YouTube, there are 40 rows, and I think it took me about 15 to 20 minutes to cast on. And then the time it's going to take me to cast off stuff, do all the finishings, and block it. I am not really familiar with knitting with this fine. It's been a bit of a learning curve. I've got to say that my ability to use these double-pointed needles has improved exponentially from where I started. So it's really nice to see a progression throughout this journey in my skills as a knitter. I think it's safe to say that no matter how long you've been knitting and no matter how proficient you are at various techniques, there is always going to be something that you can learn. And I think that's what I find so enchanting about knitting. Yeah, there's always something new. And even if you know the technique, sometimes somebody's created a pattern and interpreted it in a way that you would never have thought of. And that idea can spark off another idea and you can try something else. And in my case, I planned on knitting Victorian stockings, and instead I've knitted one Hug Me Tight vest and 2 Victorian oranges. Because I fell down a research rabbit hole and decided that I was going to do that instead because it sounded like fun. So it doesn't say what cast off method I should use, it just says to cast off in the pattern. So I am just going to cast off with like the regular non-stretchy cast off. You know, knitting and textile making is such an innately human thing to do that I feel to disregard its importance throughout history and to humanity is to lose such a vast swathe of history. Refusing to interpret textile history only gives you half the story. I have cast off my orange! It looks a bit too wide and not very tall. I am gonna try and block it, I think. I don't really know. It doesn't say to block it, but I feel that with Victorian knitting manuals, it kind of assumes that you already know what you're doing and that you'd just know to block everything you knit, which does mean that as a modern person interpreting some things that were obvious to Victorians are not obvious to us. I'm going to go make this wet, and then I'm going to block it. It's probably going to take 12 million years to dry because I live in England. I'm following the pattern. I'm not adding more rows, because the point of this is to do it as accurately as possible. I've messed it up once, I've redone it, I've done it how the pattern calls for. It doesn't say to block it, it skips right to cinching it, but I think if I don't block it, I'm going to fail before I've had a chance at success. So let's work on the assumption that in best practice one would block one's knitting and go from there. Because the knitting is so incredibly uniform and perfect on the example given in the illustration, I really feel that looks like it's been blocked. Personally, that's my interpretation. Take that with a grain of salt. It is not in the book. It is blocking, it's just in the bathroom. It's above the radiator, just kind of perched. So hopefully it won't take like 8 million calendar weeks to dry. But then it is wool in Britain, so who knows? It was at this point of view that the production value went down the drain, because I wanted to get this video out for Christmas. So here I am in my pajamas, cinching up the finished and blocked little Christmas orange, and then stuffing it with scraps of acrylic wool because I could not work out where to procure cotton stuffing, which is recommended in the pattern, and I didn't really fancy giving up some of my wool for spinning to stuff the most ridiculous historical reconstruction I have done to date. So I'm definitely encountering the same issue that I was having with the first orange, that just one row of cinching, the stitches are so dense that it won't cinch down all the way. I will persist anyway. It does seem strange that when they're asking you to cinch down that many stitches that you don't decrease at all. This must be why they say to put like a little bit of green ribbon or something on the top. So I'm going to leave that like that for now. And see if the cast on end will cinch better. Okay, that's interesting. The cast on row cinches a lot easier. Let's see if... Do I need more stuffing? Maybe just a little bit. Maybe I need just a little bit more, I think, to get it to look like the original image. This is so stupid. Well, I have an orange. Early in the video I said that this better be the most majestic orange you've seen in your life. So I don't have any satin ribbon that's not really synthetic looking. And while I did cave and have to use wool acrylic scraps as stuffing, you can't see that, so it's less annoying. I've just got a little bit of 2-ply 100% wool lace weight yarn that I had in my stash, and I used my 2mm crochet hook to just chain, I think, 40 stitches and then just do 40 treble stitches, or double crochet if you're in the US, and I'm then just going to make some of the little loop-de-doops as recommended in the pattern and sew it to the top of my orange. I'm a little bit sad that I only managed to get 6 out of the 12 Craftmas videos that I had planned up, but I will be publishing the compilation of all of the different Craftmas projects. Probably Christmas Eve, I guess, at this point, because it's the 23rd of December as I'm filming. Good golly, it's cutting it fine in terms of Christmas content. God only knows if anybody's going to bother watching this, given that you're not going to have time to make your own before Christmas, which I'm kind of sad about. But between work commitments, family commitments, and the number of migraines I've had lately, filming and editing just hasn't been on the table, and that's okay because this is a hobby, it's not my job. I think sometimes it's really easy to compare yourself to big creators on YouTube where it's their full-time job, and A, how many videos they produce, and B, the production value, like how put together the videos are. Only just past 1,000 subscribers. I'm not, like, I'm a drop in the ocean of YouTube. I did come up with a knitting pattern for leaves, which I did on my first failed attempt at an orange. I think I'm going to leave this one and do it the same way that the pattern suggests that we do it. So I'm just going to leave a little string, and then I think we can call this project, if not a resounding success, then certainly a finished project. I'm quite proud of my ridiculous little orange and how much I had to learn to be able to do this. I have never, before this project, ever successfully knitted on double pointed needles when I had to learn a whole new technique to even start this project, which then led to the realization that the reason that I've never ever been able to successfully knit in the round is because I was trying to learn on possibly the worst knitting needles ever made. I have every intention of sacrificially burning them on my Christmas Eve fire. I won't be able to include a clip of that in this video if I want it to go up on time. What I will do is make a short. So if you want to see me set the worst knitting needles known to man on fire, follow me and you can see that in shorts, because that is what I'm going to be doing on Christmas Eve. I'm not sending them to a charity shop and inflicting them on some other poor bugger. So this is how much I have over. I had started with 3 of these. So what I'm going to do is, for the sake of science, I am going to weigh my orange, and then hopefully we'll get an idea about how many grams of wool I used to make my orange using 2mm needles. So we can do some sciencey math things together, because who said that you can't mix history with STEM? Definitely not my university degree, and that's all I have to say about that one. I will do math for science. Crack out the kitchen scales and see how much this wool weighs. Earlier it said 5, but these scales are not particularly sensitive, unfortunately. As you can see, my scales are just changing. So I think I have more accurately around 6 to 7 grams left. And I started with 3 5-gram skeins. I reckon I used about half. Overall, I'm really proud of this project, and I'm so pleased that I decided to stick it out and persevere, because I learned a skill that I've been wanting to learn for years. Now I also have a silly little Victorian orange to hang on my Christmas tree, and I honestly could not be more delighted. And with that, I send you the fondest greetings for the festive season, and I will see you tomorrow, where I'm going to upload the Craftmas compilation so you can see it all in one place. Thank you so much to everyone who decided to join me on my journey on YouTube this year. I could not be more grateful for all of the lovely comments and feedback I've received. I have had so much fun making these videos for you all, and so thank you very much for watching, and I'm going to wish you all a very happy new year. Ollie, what do you think you're doing? Go on with you. Leave my tea alone, you oik.